Okay, so the moral of the story here is nothing in DC is ever easy, right?
The moral of the story is cross your fingers and wait and see.
In today's political climate, change in Washington is the only guarantee. And when small businesses aren't plugged in, they pay the price. That's why NSBA keeps you hardwired to what's happening inside DC.
Hey, Jack, how's it going this week?
Hey, Molly, how are you?
I'm doing good, thanks. And thanks everybody for joining us for Hardwired, where we keep you connected to what's happening in Washington, D.C. with our chief lobbyist, Jack Firth. Jack, what's happening this week?
This week, the Senate is gone, so it is just the House who are legislating right now. Their eyes are turned toward getting those last appropriation bills through ahead of the January 30th deadline. They will be out next week, and the Senate will be back in.
Jack, what are the priorities for lawmakers this week in Congress?
It's all appropriations right now. They made some major progress last week in both chambers. Over in the House, they advanced two bills, two funding measures. Over in the Senate, they advanced three. The three that the Senate advanced are the same that the House had passed the week before. That's the general cadence and rhythm of this. As the House passes them, the Senate picks them up and they move to the president's desk. There are still 4 out of 12 remaining appropriation bills before the government can be considered fully funded. It's very possible that another stopgap bill, which would retain the prior fiscal year's funding levels, will be passed in order to give Congress a little bit more time on those last bills. Those last bills include funding for some of the largest agencies, including the Pentagon and the Department of Education. Up to about 90% of the funding that Congress allocates toward the federal government has not moved yet, even though they've already made it through 8 of 12.
So it sounds like quite a bit left to do on the docket.
Quite a bit and not a lot of time to do it, given that each chamber is only in for 1 week.
What's the forecast on another government shutdown?
We know shutdowns harm small businesses. We've always been very consistent in our messaging about our desire to avoid another shutdown. Right now, the belief is that neither party has much of an appetite to go toward another shutdown and have another fight. That looks like the one that took place at the end of 2025. It's still possible. There are a lot of thorny issues that are caught up in some of these last appropriation bills that need to move, including, as we may have seen in the news, around the Education Department specifically has caused a lot of disagreement between parties on what these bills are going to look like. Ultimately, right now, I believe it's more likely that they will issue another stopgap bill and move that deadline a little later into the year, then we'll see a shutdown. But we'll have to see.
Speaking of thorny issues, we hear from our members that there's a decent amount of concern over tariffs. Can you tell us a little bit about what happened or actually didn't happen last week?
Right. So what everybody is kind of waiting for on the tariff issue is for the Supreme Court to issue their ruling on whether the White House has authority to use their IEPA powers to issue tariffs in the first place. A lot of people were expecting that ruling to take place last week around January 14th. Ultimately, the Supreme Court did not issue the ruling yet, so we're still in a waiting state. It's important to remember that what the president has signaled that is even in the event that the Supreme Court issues a ruling that would restrict the executive power to issue the tariffs, the White House is going to be interested in finding alternate pathways toward exercising some of those economic levers. So it remains to be seen the breadth of that ruling, how prohibitive it would be, and whether or not there would be a refund scenario, in which case businesses that were impacted by tariffs might potentially be compensated.
Okay, so the moral of the story here is nothing in DC is ever easy, right?
The moral of the story is cross your fingers and wait and see.
That sounds like an uphill battle. Speaking of uphill battles, small business is no stranger to that. What's happening in the small business policy arena this week?
Well, we've had some good victories. Last week, we saw the Credit Card Competition Act reintroduced. We've supported that historically. It was introduced in both the House and the Senate. This is a bill that's designed to lower swipe fees, increase competition in the credit card marketplace. The president also lent his support to the bill, which is a good sign, even though there's not at this moment a broad coalition of Republican support for the bill. That could change, however. We also saw last week the Save Local Business Act advance out of the House. This is a bill that would codify a 2020 joint employment regulatory standard that's been sort of in constant shift over the past decade, putting smalls in a place where they're not exactly sure whether they're in compliance or out of compliance. So we've put our support behind this bill and endorsed it in the hopes that it might make its way through the Senate and end the period of instability that small businesses and all businesses really have been facing around joint employment standards.
Yeah, I know it's something we've been really focusing on for a long time. Another thing that we've really been focused on as NSBA and the advocate for small business is healthcare and the cost of healthcare. I know that healthcare is still a major point of discussion on the Hill. What's happening on that front?
We also saw last week, interestingly, the White House put forth its healthcare proposal and framework. In some ways, this correlates with proposals we're seeing come from Republican lawmakers, an increased focus on HSAs, for example. In other ways, it's different. It puts a lot of emphasis on transparency in healthcare pricing. We'll need to see where lawmakers align themselves with the White House proposal. There are conversations about a potential second reconciliation bill moving later this year. That reconciliation bill, for those who don't know, would be able to be passed without any Democratic buy-in, so Republican lawmakers alone would be able to move it. That reconciliation bill would potentially include some healthcare provisions, potentially include some housing reform provisions. In fact, last week we saw a major caucus of Republican lawmakers put forth a tentative framework for what that bill would look like. However, it would take a lot of buy-in, so there's a lot of room for negotiation before anything like that would get off the ground.
So, Jack, I know you've been quite busy and on the Hill a lot this past week. What do you have ahead of you this week?
Well, I intend to go to the Hill and monitor two hearings that the House Small Business Committee are convening. One which is about opportunities for innovation in rural America, and another that's looking at franchising opportunities. I'll be there. I'll be talking to committee staff and sort of figuring out what their agenda looks like for the end of January.
I know that CTA is still on the top of our list. We've got the action alert on our website. I know SBIR is another thing that's very top of mind. Jack, any quick updates there?
Nothing much on CTA right now. SBIR negotiations are ongoing. We're all waiting right now to see what compromise legislation, final compromise text is going to come from the negotiations that have been taking place over the past few weeks. I've been down there making our case known, where we stand and the importance of the SBIR program to our members.
I do want to just do a quick shout out. While Jack's up on the Hill, the communications team is working hard to keep media interests up and apprised of what's happening with small business. And last week, one of our members from Cleveland, Ohio, Dwayne Grohl, was actually featured on Marketplace on NPR. So thanks to Dwayne for your help there. And we're always looking for stories and insight, and reach out to us and let us know if you've got a story you'd like us to try and get out to reporters. Certainly we'll be reaching out when they have requests for us, and we certainly appreciate those quick replies. Again, thanks for your time here today. Jack, any last comments? Good to the order?
No last comments now. Just thanks to everybody for tuning in. We love doing this.
We sure do. Well, I want to thank everyone for your time. I hope everybody has a safe and peaceful Martin Luther King Day. We're thinking about everybody, and we hope you have a great week. Bye.